Hi there, in this video I'm going to be making a walkthrough of the Bathurst circuit in the BMW Z4 GT3 car. Now I've seen quite a few people are struggling in this circuit, which is why I'm making this walkthrough, which I'm hoping will make it helpful for some people and will help them to improve their time in the race and in qualifying. Now, before I start this video, I need to remind you that this is sort of like after 15 laps on the same tyre, so they are quite warmed up, and the brakes are also warmed up. So bear that in mind when you are doing your fast laps during qualifying on your first 2 or 3 laps, that a 2 minutes 4 second lap is not going to happen, and that you need to break your tyres and brakes up to temperature first. Now, here we are at start finish straight at Bathurst, and first corner, let's begin. Now, as you come up for the first corner, you'll notice that there's tyre marks on the front of the track here, just for the 50 marker. I like to use this as a break point, but you can always just use just for the 50 marker if you want, or whatever suits your fancy. Now we're in 4th gear at the moment, so the idea is that we want to downshift to 2nd and start braking at the start of this tyre mark here at about 90%, not 100% because that's just too hard, and we want to aim for the middle of the corner, the apex. Okay, so here we go. And we see braking pretty hard. And I steer quite early. It's better to steer here later than earlier because you want to miss those curves. Just getting that white line there. We want to miss the curves because that will underset with the car, and it will mean less traction, which will make it harder to get on the throttle. We get on the throttle just as we go past the apex, as this will help steer the car. Not to mention, it will get a faster corner exit as well. If you feel the car starting to slide, use a bit of counter steering like I've done, and you should be fine. Now then, onto the straight. Go into 5th gear. I want to stay in 5th gear. I don't want to change the sticks because there isn't enough brake to make use of it, and changing down would be pointless. We'll lose time changing down basically. Okay, so here's turn 2. Now I like to use the shadow as a braking marker because it just never changes, but if you don't want to use that, you can always use the start of this white marker here, or in between 50 and 100 markers, whichever suits your fancy. You want to brake 90% again and change down into 3rd. So down 2 gears. So let's begin. So we are 90% braking, down to 3rd. Then we want to take a nice early apex, and we want to stay pretty tight to the corner while not using the curves again, and getting the throttle as early as possible while making sure that we're not going too fast so we avoid the barrier, as the barrier is pretty deadly. So we can use the curves on the outside here, but we also want to make sure that they don't push us towards the wall as well. But if everything goes okay, you should find that you might not even need to use the curbs. Okay, so now then, towards turn 3. Now we can go full throttle here, and after a bit of practice, you should be able to go pretty tight against this wall here. Very tight. And then we want to get on the brake as soon as we go past that 3rd corner. Going to 90% again. We can steer a little bit because there is quite a bit in front of us, so we're not going to go towards that wall too far. Then we want to try and go in as tight as we can, so this wall over here, well, more to the white line than the wall. And at the same time, we want to start getting onto the throttle again, slowly rolling on. And then as we straight up, we want to apply a bit more throttle, and then eventually full throttle. Now on this next sort of little corner here, we want to make sure to be careful, as it is a bit bumpy, and you can lose traction here and end up spinning into the wall. So just a bit of caution, but if you can, stay full throttle. Now with this next turn, we want to try and make use of this little left bit here, and then we want to steer in nice and early, being careful not to hit these curbs over here, because they will unsettle the car again. And you don't use steer all that much, but just enough steering to turn the car. Then we're going to straighten up so we hit these curves here, but not hit the wall. After a few laps, this will come naturally, or should do. And then we're going to start turning left for this next left-hander. And then again, and just stay steering to the left. Add more steering. And then in this next corner, we want to be as fast right as we can, and then steering nice and early. We want to completely miss those curves, and we want to get on the throttle, so we'll be going too fast otherwise. And then slowly start getting back on the throttle again. Nice and tight. Then let the car slide to the outside, while straightening up again. Just be wary not to hit that wall. But you can use those curbs to push you away from the wall as well, which I found quite handy. Now, back on the full throttle. I'm going towards the next corner. I'm going to come off the throttle again, just as we're going over the crest, rather. Now, you can use these curves on the left-hand side, but be wary of the wall on the side there, as that's pretty deadly as well. But you don't have to. I've seen fast laps before, and they haven't used those curves at all. Also, be aware of these corners curves on the right hand side. You can use them, but they are quite tall, so they can unsettle the car. Don't be too scared to get off the throttle if you need to be, as it won't affect your time too much. Now, the next set of corners, I like to start braking using this sign, about just as we go under it, can't even pushing it, or just for rather. Now I use about 60% brake, downshift to fourth, come off the brake, sometimes have a bit of throttle, and I start braking again. As I go, notice that I'm braking in a straight line here, and I'm using the throttle a bit when I want to steer the car. The throttle will help steer the car in the direction I want it to, as the brakes tend to apply too much pressure on the front wheels, which we're trying to use to steer the car. So ideally, we want to use a bit of throttle to take away some of that pressure, and which will give the front wheels a bit more traction, as well as bringing the rear end out a bit more. Okay, but well, that's just my personal preference anyway. Some people might not do it, but I do. Anyway, this next corner, we want to make sure that we're into seconds, nice and early. And you can use a bit of throttle again to turn the car. Then we want to slow down for this next corner. Really slow. And we want to stay on the left hand side, using probably about over 90 degrees of steering to the left. And then start coming on the throttle again. And then start steering to the right. Make sure you're going with that right hand wall, because that's the last thing we want to bump into. And you can go full throttle again after that, and let traction control take care of any worries you have there. Now then, going to the next corner, I like to brake just before this little corner here, taking it down a gear. then come on the throttle again. I need to come off it again, and I use this barrier here, like where it changes colour, to start braking again. Downshift into seconds, nice and early. Then I continue to brake. For this corner, it's better to go in slowly than to go out too quick, going too quick rather, and then end up sacrificing your outspeed, exit speed. Now you want to hug the wall on the inside, or hug the white line on the inside, being careful not to hit that wall. And you want to use a little bit of throttle just to turn the car, as I'm doing here, while being wary of the wall on the outside. If you need to, do come off the throttle. It's not worth it otherwise. And then you start to go full throttle again, as you've missed the wall and the car stops sliding. Now on to back straight. This time we'll use 6 gears. Now I like to use this little left hand side bit, but you don't have to. Now, coming up to this corner, I like to use this little bit of dirt on the track here. That's my braking marker. Or you can just go just before the 100 marker. And you want to brake as hard as you can, 100%, and downshift into seconds. Now you can start steering while you're braking. There's nothing wrong with that. And you want to try and clip this apex here. Now, as I'm about to show you, so start braking 100%, down into 5th, 4th, 3rd, and then I start steering into the corner while trying to miss those curbs right there, as they will unsettle the car. Just hitting the apex and accelerating out. Use a little bit of counter steering just to bring the car back in. And there we go. Now you can use these curves, there's nothing wrong with it. Just be careful it doesn't unsettle the car too much. Now, onto the last corner. I like to brake in between 150 markers, but you don't really pay attention to them too much. Once you get used to it, you just sort of like find your own marker, and you just sort of tell by instinct when you need to brake. Now for this corner, we brake as hard as we can, and downshift down into seconds, and we like to turn quite early, as I'll now demonstrate. So here we are. Harden the brakes, down into seconds, keeping it straight, and then turning in, missing those curves in the apex, and then getting on the throttle again, letting it slide, bit of counter steering, and then we use the curves on the outside. Be wary to not get the grass, because that can send you into a spin, and that is it. And that will prepare you for the first corner again, going pretty damn fast. So you can be sure the next lap will be a flyer. Okay, so that's my 2-minute full lap. This was made using GT3 setup, which I highly recommend. I used them all last season, and they got me quite a few wins. So I do recommend, if you have got some time, to popping onto the GTOS threads on the BMW forum and taking a look. And if you do use their setups, to say thanks, as they put a lot of time into this. Okay, so that's it for me. I hope this was helpful, and here we're about to show you that lap again, but from a different angle. Thank you and goodbye.